Hello there, I'm Jimmy Vegas, and this is how to make a zombie horde game in Unity 5, and welcome to episode 1. So, in this series, my intention is to look at different ways that you can create a horde game. I'll be aiming for a zombie style game, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't change your enemies to have different creatures or different enemy types. So, initially, this series should be aimed at people who are used to Unity, as this is more than likely going to be people who have already seen some of my tutorials. So, if by some chance you haven't seen how to use Unity, maybe a beginner series, I recommend heading over to the channel and having a quick look at probably the first 3 episodes or so of the series, and then you'll probably be up to speed with what we're going to be doing in this series, because I'm not going to go through the basics in this episode. I'm going to get straight into development. So basically, if you know the layout of Unity, you know basics, how to add things, how to import, then you'll have no problems at all. So throughout the course of this series, we'll be covering, we'll be starting with basics, like some basic level design, followed by some simple mechanics, a bit of user interface. I want to try and create a system as well to use some money, maybe upgrade. We'll look at weapons, spawning, and pretty much anything that you would find in a Horde style game. So this is the first episode, so let's get everything in order. So let's firstly create a nice simple room to begin with. So we can do that obviously by going 3D object and a cube. So let's imagine this is the floor, so we need to expand it. So let's have 10, in fact 10's a bit small. Let's do 20 by 20. Right click, rename, have this as floor 01. And let's create a parent object for this. So it can be room 1. So let's create empty. Drag it out of floor 1. Right click, no, F2 I should say. And let's call this room 01. And let's put the floor into there. So now we have this. Usually what I would do is add a texture to this, and I am going to do this, but we're going to do something a little bit differently in this series as well, because we're going to start doing precise textures earlier on. So firstly, let's create a folder for our texture. So textures. And in there, I'm going to drag and drop this floor 001 texture, which you head over to the website as always, download an asset, head to the zombie horde tutorial, and you can download it there. Drag and drop onto there, and let's then go to our materials folder and our material. So let's change this to be a little bit more metallic and a little less smooth, about there I think. So now what we'll do is let's create a normal map for this. So right click, create, and sorry, not do that. We have to duplicate before we create anything. So it's got floor 02, but let's rename that to floor 001 underscore normal. And I'm going to change this to normal map. And I'm not going to tick grayscale at the moment. I'll explain a little bit why. In fact, I'll explain now. As you can see, if you don't have grayscale ticked, it does kind of still represent the color, which has an impact on how it looks on your texture on the material. If you were to tick from grayscale, you then get to change the bumpiness, i.e. how much it's raised or appears raised from the initial texture. So if we click apply, you can see it changes to a kind of, well, it's a lot purpler, I should say, shouldn't I? So untick from grayscale and apply. And I'm going to put that onto the material. So I'm going to go over here, drop the material down, and just drag and drop the normal map straight onto there. Now, next thing I'm going to do is a height map. Now, a height map is slightly different than a normal map, as you will see as we put it on. Now, I already have these height maps here, so I'm going to drag and drop this height map onto there. Now, to create a height map, what you would do, best way to do it, I've found, is if you open up a texture in something like Photoshop or even Paint, to be honest, and save it as a monochrome file, i.e. just black and white. The white represents the raised area, so the whiter it is, the higher it appears. The darker it is, the lower it appears. So if I drag and drop this now onto the height map, you'll see that it does raise it. And we can also change this by sliding, and you should be able to see that it is raising and lowering the textures on the material if I slide that up and down. So you get kind of that little effect going. So now let's tile this. So I want it tiled by, let's say, 4 by 4. So now we can see, just by looking at this texture, with that height map applied, it's still straight. However, it gives it much more detail when the light is reflecting off it. So you can always play around with the materials in this. So you can kind of bring the normal map a bit lower. You can invert it even to give it a dirtier, grittier look. So without ever actually changing the color of a texture, you can always change these settings here to give it a much grittier look and feel. So I quite like how that looks at the moment, so I'm going to stick with that. So now let's move on to how we can do it again with our walls. So I'm going to take floor 01 and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to rotate by 90 degrees on the Z or Z. Let's take it out of there. Okay, so there we go. That looks better. Let's quickly check our snap settings. Snap is at 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. That is good enough. So I'm going to drag our wall over here, F2, and rename wall 01. Now the same is going to apply what we've just done. So I'm going to bring in this wall to there, slap it on there, and now let's create a normal map. So duplicate, which is Control D if you've forgotten. Let's rename so we have everything in order nicely. So this is normal, and let's change this to a normal map, and let's leave the create from grayscale and apply. Now I think we may need to shrink the size of our wall, so I'm going to shrink it on the Y to 10, and then I'm going to bring it up to about there maybe. So next let's put our normal map where it should be, nice and simple, and then let's bring in our height map. Remember, you can always create that height map, just save it as a monochrome and put it on the height map. I just realized that's not I don't think we saved that as a normal map, did we? Or have I done that wrong? Let's have a look. Oh, there we go. Yeah, sorry, my bad. Okay, so there we have that. Let's increase our normal map size, and sorry, our height map size, I should say. And let's decrease the normal map to -1.53. So it's kind of in line with that. I'm not sure I like that. Let's change. Okay, I think I like that a little bit better. So all we need to do now is let's have this wall duplicated around. Let's have that 90 degrees. Let's bring it into place. Now this is the simplistic way of doing everything in Unity. Realistically, you can create a game with cubes, just pure simple plain cubes. It's somewhat recommended for the type of game you would want like this, because you can always enclose things, but it's not necessarily the best way of doing it. For example, if you were to take models from something like Blender, if you were to create them yourself, you'd probably get a bit more detail involved. But for now, for the simplicity of what we're creating, because we're going for the more mechanics of a Horde game, this is perfect for us. Okay, so we've now created a room. So it's been not a short episode this, but we're creating somewhere and playing with different settings that I don't think I've really touched upon in other tutorials. So I want this to look pretty decent. So I'm going to change this normal map now to grayscale and click apply. And that looks quite, not nasty, but I'm not sure I like that. So I'm going to decrease that there. So maybe just a little bit we need to have it. So 0.1. Too much again. So maybe about there, 0.01. Okay, I think that looks quite nice now. So before we go, let's have a quick fiddle with our lighting to make it look even better. So let's take our directional light and let's give it a darker lighting atmosphere. Let's go to window, let's go to lighting, and then let's change our ambient source to color, and let's change our color to be a bit deeper, a bit like a blue. Okay, that's looking better. And let's see, what should we do now? Let's create a little bit of, I tell you what, I think what we need to do is change the tiling on these possibly, or shrink them, because I want kind of like an indent into the room. So let's tile it across on the X by 2. Not sure I like that. And if we do that, then we end up with walls like that. So what we'll do is we'll do that by that. We can kind of cheat a little bit. Let's decrease the size to 5 by 10. Bring it into place. And I guess we could always change this here as well to kind of match these tiles along the wall. So maybe we should do that once we've built this wall up. There we go. And let's get rid of that. So anyway, at this point you can see that we do have it looking at least somewhat appropriate for the style of game that we're going for. Kind of gritty, dark kind of game. And let's rotate that by 90 into place. I'm just using the snap at the moment just so as this goes into place nicely. If you were wondering at any point. Okay, and let's bring that to there. And that to there. And now let's change the tiling on here. So I think we'll need to change this to 5 by 5. Okay, that looks better. Okay, so I'm happy with how that looks. I'm just going to quickly increase the smoothness to about there. Increase the metallic to decrease, I should say, to about there. And I'll just increase the metallic on the wall a little. And normal map. How do we want it to look exactly? Do we want to keep it as the -1.53? I think we will. So last thing I'll do is I will bring in a bit of a wall. So I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to change it to 5 across there. And in fact, is it really worth it? I'm not sure it's worth it, to be honest. We might just leave it as a room and we can open it up later on. What we may end up doing is creating our own model using this texture here and seeing where we go. So I'm just going to duplicate that Just bring it up to be the ceiling. About there. Well, I don't think there's much point in the directional light being directional at the moment, so let's have it as point. Okay. That looks fine for now. There we go. Okay, so now we have our room using a couple of different techniques. So I'm going to save that scene there, and I'm just going to call this Area 01. Okay, so next episode we'll be bringing in a controller and design an actual level. We'll define some spawn points for zombies, and we probably will bring in some zombies next time, but there'll be some C# scripting in the next episode to get things moving along. So at the moment, as I say, we've set up our general area and made it look pretty nifty, to be honest. I think it looks rather nice. So yeah, until the next episode, guys, thank you very much for watching.